Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact on the first responder answering the call? Available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
The biggest example of that recently, it wasn't too long ago, I had a 911 misdial. For those of us in the field, we know that we get 100 of those a day, because especially with phones auto-dialing 911, if they fall too hard or anything like that, they come in all the time. And I ended up talking to this woman, and she said everything was fine, but something sounded off just in her tone, in kind of what I could hear in the background. Just something wasn't right. So I sent a couple officers over there, and it ended up being a domestic. And the person involved, not her, but the other person there, ended up getting arrested. So it's kind of things like that where if I had taken that call in my training, my trainer would have been listening, obviously, at that point. But it's kind of just an example of that sixth sense that I was talking about, where something just sounded off enough where it was kind of raising a red flag for me.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast and all of you who are watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. Thank you all so very much, because I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you, so thank you. A lot of stuff going on. Episode 617 just went out, and actually 618, my bad, 618, and this is actually going to be episode 619, and it's already going to be coming out the next week. Of course, you listening to it, it probably sounds weird because you're already listening, so it's not the following week. I'm speaking from September 5th, which is also my eldest son's birthday. So he turned 26. He's turning 26 today. Holy crap. And I'm 44. Yes, doing the math. I started early. But man, happy birthday, Richie. As always, a lot of stuff going on, and appearances all over the place. Next week, I'm going to be in Texas for the 911 leadership training event that Joe Serio, the 360 dispatcher, puts on. If you don't know what that is, head over to joeserio.com. You'll find everything there. Just look for the training events up at the top and scroll down. You'll see the Mayan Ranch training on there, and it is life altering, as a lot of people have said. I'm one of the regular instructors there, and it's a lot of fun. So make sure to check that out. And also, a big shout out to Rapid SOS for their partnership and helping to continue the mission and longevity that is Within the Trenches podcast, the Trenches community, the Dispatchers Roundtable, all of those things. So thank you, Rapid SOS, very, very much for that as well. Any information for that, go to rapidsos.com. So I am excited for my guest today. And my guest today is Charles, and he just had some overtime earlier today, so I'm excited that he's on and that we're able to do this. But he's a dispatcher and CTO out of NVRDD out of Massachusetts. What's up?
How you doing?
I am doing all right, and I'm glad that you gave the acronym versus going through the whole thing, because when you were starting to say it, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to remember.
It can certainly be a mouthful, so I think that's easier for both of us.
Yes, for sure. But again, I'm happy to have you on here, and in true dispatch fashion, just pushing through overtime style and coming on here afterwards. Did you even get a chance to sleep or anything, or nap?
I slept a little bit last night, but it's part of the job. So
This is true. Yes, this is true. For those watching, listening, who are from the general public, who do not know anything about public safety, especially dispatch, man, we work a lot of hours, and sometimes sleep is like, huh?
sometimes
What
it
a
goes to the
concept.
wayside.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but like for myself, I didn't want, I felt like I was wasting the day, which is crazy to say because, we need rest, but I always felt like I was wasting the day, because I would work midnights and then I would sleep, but I would set an alarm. Like I would only have maybe 4.5, maybe 5 hours of sleep. And I would get up because, again, I feel like I was wasting the day and I needed to do something.
Yeah, so I got off last night at 11, and then I got maybe 4.5, 5 hours of sleep, and I was back this morning. And I don't want to take a nap because, like you said, it feels like you're wasting the day.
Right, and it kind of screws up the sleep as well, especially if you're used to working midnights and everything. When I was off, I would try to stick to that night shift schedule as much as possible, but there would be a couple times where I would sleep early, and then when I was back in dispatch working my midnight shift, it sucked.
Yeah, yeah. The midnight shift always throws me off whenever I'm on overtime for it. So,
Oh man. Well, let's jump right in because I want to learn more about you, Charles. So how did you get into dispatch to begin with?
so I kind of fell into dispatching, so to speak. So right after high school, I was actually working as a chef,
Hmm.
and it was good, but wasn't really going to be my thing long term. So I actually went and I was a EMT briefly in the city of Worcester. So I don't know who knows Massachusetts that well. Worcester can be kind of a crazy place sometimes. And this was also right around COVID. So wasn't there for super long. I ended up leaving that position and I was kind of home doing some things here and there. And a family friend ended up showing a opening for me for a dispatcher. And I applied for it. And like I said, it kind of fell into my lap almost. I went in, I had a general idea of what it did and what it was, but overall, I was kind of going in blind. And the rest is history. So that was in January of 2021 is when I first started dispatching.
Oh man. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So you start out as a chef,
Yes.
right? And so I have to ask with that, only because of all of the reality shows that I've watched. But I can imagine just being in food in general, and really just from my own experience. I wasn't a chef or anything, but I mean, like, when I'm at home and I'm hosting, I'm trying to time everything,
Mm-hmm.
all of the different
Absolutely.
dishes that I'm doing, whether I'm grilling and doing something inside. I'm trying to time it all out. So there's
Mm-hmm.
multitasking. and all of the other stuff, delegating. If anybody else, I need help, can you bring me this or that? So in comparison, thinking about you being a chef and trying to time everything out and dealing with other people, do you feel as though in any way some of those things that you were doing, just a basic concept and foundation of those multitasking skills and everything,
Yeah.
and timing,
Yeah.
basically triage, right? In a way, do you
Yeah.
feel like some of that kind of prepared you, even if it was for, being an EMT or going into dispatch?
So specifically moving over to dispatch and being a chef, I dubbed them soft skills
Yeah.
when I was kind of translating everything over. Like you said, multitasking, huge in food service, and it translates really well to dispatching, as well as working under pressure. A commercial kitchen can get very intense a lot of the time, so that translates well to teamwork, as well as working solo when you have to. All of those skills are basically one-to-one over dispatching, and it helped me in my training a ton while I was still going through it.
Oh, I can just imagine, and as well as the heat in there, and
Mhm.
then the heat in the dispatch center that can happen
Yes,
metaphorically or even literally.
for sure. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when you were an EMT though, I can imagine you're listening to the, also always radio traffic and stuff.
Mhm.
So I guess during that time as well, did it kind of intrigue you a little bit or pique your curiosity as to what it was like on the other side? Did you get a chance to do any type of like sit along or anything?
No, not at the time when I was working as an EMT, but it definitely piqued my interest while I was there. It was something that I was always kind of interested about, but wasn't really sure how to break into.
Hmm.
Because, like I said, I didn't really know a ton about it aside from what everyone sees on TV shows. Right, that was kind of my extent of what I saw at the time of dispatching. So.
Yeah, and I think there were a few shows that had come out around that time as well. You had one on the Oxygen Channel, which was, what was it, 911 Crisis Center, I believe, which
Yeah.
is yeah, that one's based off um, dispatchers like Chagrin Valley Dispatch out of the state of Ohio,
Okay.
and so there was that one, and I know there was another one, but either way, you had all that stuff going on, and then you're going through all of this COVID, post-COVID time. So there's
Mhm.
got to be an interesting aspect to that as well, whether it be EMT, but going into dispatch, because I can just imagine maybe some of those protocols were still there a little bit,
Absolutely.
dispatch wise.
Absolutely. It was at the time we were getting notified through various board of healths about, if there was somebody who had been COVID positive at the residence, and then it was information that was relayed to the fire department. And then we were running into, maybe 4 or 5 weeks or even months down the road, that notification was still in there because we were running into the problem of people were needing to go back and take them out because you couldn't, or they didn't time out after a couple weeks or a month or 2 months. So it would end up being 3-4 months down the road, and like, is this still active? Probably not, but is the nature of COVID. It was a lot of figuring it out as we went. So.
Do you ever like just sit back for a moment and think about the fact that we were in that crazy situation? I mean, I will be downstairs with my kids sometimes and we'll be talking about it and we'll see certain things and they'll go, "Oh, that was during COVID." I'm like, "That was such a crazy time."
It was so crazy. Everybody was inside. Nobody was going anywhere. If you did drive somewhere, you were like the only car on the road. It was an absolutely wild time to live through.
Right. It's like a zombie apocalypse, man. Like I remember I
I'll be
was
fabricating stories to my grandkids for sure.
yes, exactly. Yeah, man. Like I remember just being in the airport, when it was okay, when they first started
Mhm.
saying that it's okay to start traveling,
Yep.
I'd go to the airport and there was like nobody there. And I'm standing there with a mask on, and then maybe one or two people would come out, and I would think, I
Mhm.
mean, this is kind of cool.
But you
Now
get
everything is
so.
yeah, now everything is, super packed. But again, but those are some crazy times. So
It was.
you end up applying, and as you said, you're kind of going in blind a little bit because you didn't have a sit along or anything like that. So let's look back at that first day that you're walking into dispatch. What is it that you're seeing? Are there multiple people working at a time that you're seeing when you're walking in? Are there, tons of monitors, keyboards? Are you feeling overwhelmed? What was that like walking in that first time?
Sure, sure. So when I walked in for the very first time, there were three people working on the dispatch floor at the time.
Mhm.
And I just remember being like, what did I just sign up for? Because I'm looking at these two monitors in front of me that are the size of televisions
Mhm.
with softwares that I've never seen, radio systems that I've never seen. And then we break into the other two screens in Massachusetts, which are 911 screens. So I'm looking at, 5, 6, 7 screens in front of me, and I don't know what any of it was. So, aside from maybe Word and Google Maps, I had that down at the time. But
That
so
is
it
that's go
it
ahead.
was overwhelming.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna say, I could just imagine it being overwhelming seeing all of that stuff for the first time. Because I remember even with 4 years of experience going
mhm,
into a central dispatch where there are multiple people working, that was overwhelming, just walking
mhm,
in because I'm thinking, "Okay, I was working 8 hours by myself in
yeah,
the PD. Now I've got other people, but also they're doing so much stuff
mhm.
that I can't wrap my head around it, and they're eating at the same time. How am I gonna do this?"
They're eating, typing, answering the phone all at once.
Yes. Yeah, doing things that you would imagine almost like an octopus would be doing with
Yeah.
all of but they've only got 2 arms, and they're doing what they're doing.
Sometimes I feel like I have two hidden ones that just do things for me as I go. So.
You're like, "Wait, I don't remember pushing that. How did I do that?" But
Right.
you get into that zone, right? You
Mhm,
you dial in, and
mhm.
then when it's done, sometimes you're like,
You just
"We
kind of go,
just"
what just happened? So,
Yeah, like, "We just did that," and sometimes it's one or the other. You either look up at the clock and you realize, like, 2 hours have gone by, or you look up at the clock and it's like, "Oh, it's only been 10 minutes."
yeah, that's such a perfect way to put it. Yeah.
Ah, it is it what a profession, man. I say it a lot on these episodes, but it is. It's you think about what it is that we do and what you go through for it, and, it sometimes it's unbelievable, and especially to other people when they're listening, if you're telling them about what you're doing and their eyes are just popped out, so you end up going in, you see all of this stuff, you start training. Was there anything that I guess surprised you at all from like the transition from EMT into dispatch?
Honestly, I guess the biggest thing that surprised me about dispatching was just the sheer amount of just raw information that we had, especially with access to things like CGIS.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if everybody listening is familiar with that is. It's basically a database with like license numbers, right, and all the information that's attached to it. Just having access to that alone is wild, and it really surprised me just how much information was really there, kind of to grab, off a license number, off a name and a birthday, things like that. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. CGIS, the NCIC, like all of that. For those who are watching and listening, you have to go through a certification process and
yeah.
everything for it, so that you can get access to all of this stuff. So if an officer says, "Hey, I need you to run such and such person. Here's
Mhm,
their date of birth," or they might give you a partial information for the person, and then
mhm.
you get to be detective style,
Yes.
and you have to go look for it,
Mhm.
and if they give you, like, I don't know, a John Smith, you know
And you're looking at 40 different ones trying to figure out who it might be. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and the reason I say that, again, for those who are watching, listening, who don't know this stuff, it's a common name, like a very common name, like
Mhm.
the probably most common name ever, and, yeah, it comes back with all these people, so one good thing would be if they had an identifier, so, if they just happen to be in the system or something like that, and had, a certain tattoo, it would be easy to identify that person specifically. But if it's, someone who's just regular person who doesn't have a record or anything like that, it's like it could be this person.
The amount of detective work that goes into dispatching is something that I would add to that. About that really surprised me, especially when you're talking about like police work and law enforcement. Like detectives are detectives, right? When you think detective work, that's what you think of.
Yeah.
But the amount of detective work that goes on in dispatch sometimes, especially when a hot call drops, so to speak, so like a high priority call, it caught me by surprise for sure. The first couple of times that I kind of had to do that on the fly. So
yeah, the adrenaline starts kicking up, and you start to feel the beads of sweat sometimes, depending on how hardcore it is. You're like, okay, here we go, and
yeah.
and if you've never been in that situation before, it's even more so. So you're in there. How long did the training last?
Ooh, what it was between 4 and 6 months, kind of in that time frame was how long my training was, and that was full time. So I was coming in and I was training 40 hours a week for 4 to 6 months until I was released to be a dispatcher by myself.
Oh man, yeah, 40 hours a week going through, and you're sitting with someone, and in the beginning, you learn your geography and everything, all the different codes, whatever, comes with that, policies, procedures. But then when they
Geography,
put you
personnel, all of it for sure.
yeah, and when they put you on the phones and they go, "All right, we're going to put everything to the test." Usually they start out with non-emergency calls, and you're taking those alarm calls, whichever. Now, did they have like the umbilical cord? Did they have you hooked up to it?
Yes. Yep. So our phones are all attached with that wire. So
Mhm. Yeah.
every now and then it gets wrapped up and stuck on things.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that I remember the most is having that little clip that connects the wires for the person who's listening and the person who's on the phone, and it's got that little switch to mute your microphone or unmute it. And sometimes the trainer, whoever I was with, would not turn that off, so you would hear and they'd go, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh no, it's like it's on the wrong one, put it back on mute."
uh,
Yeah, those were fun but also nerve-wracking. So
for sure.
you had that much time where you're going through training and everything, and you guys do all three disciplines of public safety, like,
Correct.
police, fire,
We
EMS, so
do
you take all of
fire
those?
EMS dispatch as well as emergency medical dispatch, which is CPR instructions, the Heimlich maneuver, Narcan, just stuff like that. So
So coming from being an EMT, did you feel like that was a little easier for you taking medicals, or was it difficult? And when I say difficult, I mean because you were in the beginning, you were hands-on.
mhm,
Now it's your voice, and you're
correct.
trying to talk these instructions, and the instructions that you're going off of for EMD might be a little different from being in person.
Mhm.
So were there any difficulties there, or was it just kind of like, I got this?
So the information translated, so how you do CPR, how you administer Narcan, how you perform the Heimlich maneuver, that information translated really well. Where
Mhm.
I found difficulty was learning how to take that information and word it in a way that somebody that's freaking out can understand and take action on. So that's where that difficulty kind of comes in from. I can have the information, I can know how to do it, but how can I relay to you how to do it so you understand when you're panicking?
That is very true. Yeah, that is something that you pick up and you learn over time
Mm-hmm.
as you're doing it. And well, I say over time, but in this world, for those who are watching and listening, it's like that. It's over
Yeah.
time, it's fast. So it's more so from call to call. You're learning it, and you're learning fast, and you're learning how to say certain things. And I don't know if they did this for you during training, but for me, like, there would be a couple calls that I would listen to that I took, and I would go, okay, I'll word it different next time, or say it in a way that might be a little faster. So those things kind of help. Did they have you do anything like that?
I did do that during training, and especially when I was first starting out and I was re-listening to myself trying to
Hmm.
explain this to people. Every now and then I'd give myself a little bit of a face palm because listening back, especially when you're first starting, your skills are still getting ironed out. So it it definitely helped when I did it. So
and a lot of times nobody wants to hear their own voice, right? So
yeah.
you're going through and like, why did I say it like that? Or was that me? Did
Is
I
this what I
hiccup?
sound like when I'm on the phone?
Right? Yeah, there's
Yeah,
so many things, but it's always good to listen back. I mean, a lot of people do it, not just in this profession, but I mean, hell, like comedians, they do it, and they do it in order to get better for their sets.
right.
Public speakers, a lot of people when they're doing this type of work and they're talking, mostly, you listen back to it and you're able to really perfect your craft, and it's a good thing. It sucks at the time, because you're listening like, "Oh."
You're like, well, now I know what to say next time.
Right, yeah, yeah, it's definitely learning from it. That's why, a lot of times when people say, "Ah, I feel like I failed at that," or whatever, or "I screwed up," I'm like, I mean, you didn't fail, okay? Also, nothing bad happened. You just have to, you learn from it.
Correct.
You learn from all of these things when things happen. So you're going through your training, and just all of the stuff that's going on. Do you remember whether it be your first call or some of those earlier phone calls that you were taking?
Sure. Yeah. So I have two in mind.
Hmm.
My first 911 call that I remember taking, it was a woman. She was having an anaphylactic reaction, and they were in a car, so they had pulled over at a gas station, and they were driving through the area. They didn't really know where they were. So on top of trying to give EMD instructions, I kind of had to figure out where they were in town. Granted, at this time we did have a next generation 911, and we were able to get a pretty good ping on their cell phone. So we were able to get people there fairly quickly. Memory serves, it was sub 5 minutes. We had people there rendering care, and that was kind of my first real medical, so to speak. Like I had taken medicals prior to this, but they were, I my finger hurts. My stomach is hurting me. It's been like this for a few days, but that was my first high priority medical that I can really remember.
So I can just imagine it being a little, maybe not like completely shocking, but it get your adrenaline going, because when someone is calling and they're having a reaction like that, I remember taking a phone call from someone who got stung by a bee, and they were, allergic, and they didn't have, an EpiPen or anything, and the person goes, "Yeah, I can feel like my throat is starting to close up." And I'm going through all of my, my protocols and everything that I'm supposed to be doing, and I just remember in the back of my head thinking, please let there be a truck that is close. And luckily enough, they were pretty close.
Mhm.
And I'm just staying on with that person, and they're being super calm. And they had said, I've gone through this before. And in my head, I'm like, okay, good, because I haven't.
Yeah. I'm
I'm
glad one of
I'm
us has. So.
right. Yes. Yeah. It's like you're being calm. I'm supposed to be calm. I'm going to be calm with you. But in the back of my mind, I'm kind of freaking out because I just want you to be okay. And everything came out fine. But those ones, especially in the beginning, they get you going. You said you had a second one that you thought of as well.
Sure, I'll get into that. And to piggyback off of the be calm thing,
Hmm.
I have to give a little bit of my credit to my EMT instructor when I was going through my EMT class, because a piece of advice he had for us during that class was be the duck. You look like you're gliding on top of the pond, but in reality, you're freaking out under the water because the feet are going.
That that is a good way to
Yep,
put it.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
I have never thought about that. That's a good one. I'm gonna
So,
remember that
yeah,
myself.
little bit of wisdom from my EMT instructor.
Yeah.
And as far as my second call that I really remember that sticks out to me towards the beginning, it was a pretty big brush fire. So we had a pretty big brush fire start. It was behind a nursery in a solar field. So it ended up being a fairly large response. We were able to get it out in a few hours, but that was kind of my first full fire call that I just handled by myself. I didn't really take assistance from anybody. I was able to get all the resources there quickly, and it was kind of my first big fire call that I handled start to finish. So
How did that feel? Because there are some calls, and what I mean is, like, there's some calls that when you've handled it, at the end, you're like, I just did that.
Absolutely.
Well, you're kind of patting yourself on the
it
back.
was a big confidence boost, especially because that was really my first, decent sized fire call where I'm like, I can do this. Because, training it's tough. It's 6 months of, you can kind of doubt yourself, and because you're learning so much information on top of, the stress of the job itself. It's just a lot, and there's a lot of self-doubt involved. Well, at least there was for me. I don't know about everyone else, but
you are correct. I think that is with everyone, because even though we're dealing with lives, right? And I think a lot of times what the thing that really sets in with all of us is trying to be perfect.
yeah.
Because we're dealing with lives, and because other people are like, you should be perfect, you should be doing this, you should get everyone out there as fast as possible. And yes, they're going as fast as possible. Like, we can have the greatest picking the phone up time and toning them out, but also the world happens. They could be going there, and there could be some sort of traffic that they have to go around or something, or maybe that caller gave a different part of the address and we have to, reconfirm or something. So there's all of this, and then the second guessing as well, a little bit that goes into it. I think we all do it, but I think one of the things that we also need to normalize and remember is that we are human.
Yes. Yeah.
Because some folks do fall into those moments where they're like, I can't do this, or I can't get this, or whatever. But it's because they're trying so hard to be perfect that they forget those moments to just give themselves grace.
That's a great point, honestly. And especially in a career field with stakes as high as the one that, I work in, and everyone that I work with works in, it's really hard, even when you make a really, really, really small error, because like you said, we're human. It feels like a failure because of the stakes of things that we deal with.
I fully agree. I remember some of those moments, and it takes me back sometimes. And sometimes I wish I could go back in time just to tell myself, hey, everything is going to be okay. You're going to be all right. Things are, just give yourself a little grace. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
because I definitely wasn't. I definitely wasn't when a lot of those things happened, and I needed to just really tell myself that. It took a while for me to realize a lot of these things, but that's why conversations like this are so important, so that others that are listening, and those who end up coming into the profession as well, they will also know and feel comfortable knowing that these things are okay, and that they're not alone. So with these, you're going on 5 years in public safety.
Correct.
Where do you feel like you felt that you were dialed in? Because a lot of people say between 2 and 3 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years, is where they feel like they've dialed into it.
That time frame is pretty much on point. So
Yeah.
when I really started feeling confident in pretty much every aspect of the job, it was probably around the 3-year mark. Because around the 3-year mark, that's when I've handled just about everything to some extent, or I've at least been involved in just about everything to some extent, where you're really solid on those skills that you learned, a couple of years ago, where you don't really have to think about it anymore. It kind of just becomes muscle memory as you do it. And that comes down to, what questions you need on specific calls. To, we call it the sixth sense where I work, where obviously as a dispatcher, I only have my ears, right? I can't see anything. I can't smell anything, nothing like that. So you kind of get the knack for when somebody's lying to you, or maybe not lying, but maybe just omitting something that you think is important. So it was probably around the 3-year mark where that sixth sense started to really kick in for me.
It's interesting how all of the senses start heightening in a way. And I've told people that, when you're in this profession and you've really got your dispatch ear going and everything, one ear is listening to everything in the room, like every single thing. The other ear is listening to not just the caller, or even if they're not speaking, if you hear their breathing, or if the phone is down, you're listening to every little thing in the background of that phone call. And I've told people the dispatch ear, when you're listening to stuff like that, it's like in a movie, in an action scene where it goes into slow motion and the camera starts focusing in on little things and out and then in and out. And like, that's exactly what we're doing.
The biggest example of that recently, it wasn't too long ago, I had a 911 misdial. For those of us in the field, we know that we get 100 of those a day, because especially with phones auto dialing 911, if they fall too hard or anything like that, they come in all the time. And I ended up talking to this woman, and she said everything was fine, but something sounded off just in her tone, in kind of what I could hear in the background. Just something wasn't right. So I sent a couple officers over there, and it ended up being a domestic. And the person involved, not her, but the other person there, ended up getting arrested. So it's kind of things like that where if I had taken that call in my training, my trainer would have been listening, obviously, at that point. But it's kind of just an example of that sixth sense that I was talking about, where something just sounded off enough where it was kind of raising a red flag for me, even though she wasn't reporting anything. She said everything was fine.
It's those moments that you just gave me goosebumps, man. Like just thinking about those, because a lot of time, just a little noise jolts it. It kicks it in. Your gut starts telling you something is not right. You've heard enough calls, and you're, like I said, you're dialed in, almost to like the universe in a sense, where you have people that are calling in, and we're just like connected, and it always also at the same time intrigues me how people call in on their worst day, and they put so much trust in a voice, and we're there, and we're doing everything that we can to help them and send someone out. But then if they call in and the phone is just off the hook and we're listening, we start to think outside the box. We start to, like you said, that sixth sense, that gut feeling, and you send someone out, and bam, just like yours, turned out to be a domestic. And afterwards, you're just, like, yes, we did it. Like, we did that, man. We helped those people out. So with your going on 5 years, like, how do you feel like the profession has kind of changed you?
So this is an interesting one. I think the way that the profession has changed me the most is how I handled death. And that's kind of a morbid topic to really break into, but because not just dispatchers, but people in public safety in general are just exposed to it so much more than somebody who doesn't work in the field. It starts to become something, I don't want to say normal, because it's never normal, but something that you become more accustomed to, and accustomed to being around.
It's a version of normal. Like others, normies, the general public wouldn't understand that. But I bet you anything, let's just say anyone out there has their own version of normal to a certain aspect of life or profession or whatever. I mean, think about someone who works at like a pallbearer, or someone doing those things, or someone that's working in a funeral home or whichever, and they're doing all the the embalming and like all that stuff. They would probably, this is normal. This is a normal day. The person moves around like that, and you're like, that's not normal.
Tuesday morning. So
right. Yeah, exactly. And so like you're saying, for us, some of that stuff that comes in becomes a form of normal. There's some normality to it where
Yes.
you're like, this is what it's like when, especially if you're working in the mornings. I don't know if you ever noticed this, but I used to notice that almost every day at a certain time in the morning, there would be a medical that would come in because someone would wake up and find a loved one had passed.
Yeah.
And we would sit there and we would almost look at, the clock and be like,
Mhm.
okay, it's around this time. And sure enough, I mean, it didn't happen all the time, but there were some times where it's happening and you're like, damn, like this is life.
Yeah, Ricardo, I definitely get what you're saying. It's, normally between 8 and maybe 10:30, people start to get up, they start their day, they go to check on people that they live with, and they figure out that a loved one has passed away overnight. Or the alternative to that, somebody may have fallen at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
and they're just going to get checked on now because people are getting up and they find them there on the floor. So yeah, definitely.
There's some I don't want to say routine, but it seems like that in a way in certain situations, especially when we're, there in dispatch, or or you have the Super Bowl and you're like, let's see how many people call in because they're upset. And I'm sure also during like COVID time, I remember a lot of friends who were working in dispatch that the amount of arguments and everything that went up. I don't remember what the percentage was, but
Mhm.
your people are getting like cabin fever and they're just getting mad with each other because you had to stay home unless
Mhm.
you absolutely needed to be out.
Yeah, so I started in 2021, so I
Mhm.
can't compare to pre-COVID,
Yeah.
but my coworkers that I had spoken to, some of them had mentioned that domestics and family disputes and maybe just neighbor disputes in general
Mhm.
just went up because everyone was sick and tired of being in their room. So
Yeah. And so whether it was during that time or whether it's like Super Bowl or even the holidays, that's another one. When the
yeah,
holidays are coming around, it's
absolutely.
almost normal in a way in our profession and our lives to get those types of phone calls because, you've got people that just aren't getting along, or maybe somebody didn't cook the turkey right. I don't know. But
Yeah.
you know so just things are happening. So yeah, no, I get exactly what you mean
Mhm.
when you're talking like this normal type of aspect to it, and just different types of calls that are coming in. Or for me, the way it kind of changed me was like with my kids. And
Mhm.
even now, even today, I've been out of dispatch 12 years now. I've been in public safety for over 2 decades, just in general, working on the private side and everything that I do now. But my dispatch time was 13 years. And that was plenty of time for it to
Mhm.
change me in many different ways, but
Absolutely.
especially with my kids. And I'll give this quick example is that I took a phone call where this little kid was running around while having a fork, and I think they fell. I don't remember for sure now, but the fork went up into the roof of their mouth.
Mhm.
So it was probably about a year ago or so now. But my my youngest daughter, what we were gonna do like a dinner and a movie type thing. So we were all sitting in the living room to watch, and she goes, "I'm gonna go run get a fork," and I'm like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "You're gonna walk." You are going to walk and
Walk
get
and
a
you're gonna hold the
fork.
fork all the way to your side when you come.
Right. Yes. I'm going to bring you in like it's like you're a plane. I'm gonna bring you in and direct you.
Yeah,
But it's little things like that,
yeah.
and I know there's a lot of people that it has changed in many different ways. Now, if you feel comfortable, are there, any calls that kinda stick with you out of these almost 5 years?
Yeah. So there's a couple that I could break into here, but I think I'm really gonna stick to one because
Mhm,
it's the one and only murder that I've taken in my career so far. Don't want another one, but
mhm,
it's the only one that has been there so far. And it was a call from a 13-year-old little boy. He had called 911 because his mother's boyfriend had started to go after her. And so she had basically, while being attacked, asked him for help to call 911. So he had gone back into his bedroom. And he had locked the door. So he wasn't 100% sure what was happening. He knew that the boyfriend had a knife. He believed the boyfriend had stabbed her, but he wasn't 100% sure. He didn't know this person's full name. Not criticizing this child at all. He was a 13-year-old little boy, but I was trying to get as much information as possible from him when it comes to the information that we're looking for. Are there any other weapons in the home aside from the knife? What is his name? What is he wearing? What is his physical description? Does he drive? Do we know what car he has? And so we got the information that we could. We had sent police and EMS over there. EMS was staged. They weren't going right up until the cops got in there. And when the police got there, the suspect had ended up fleeing. He got picked up a little while later by another agency, and this was back in 2023. So he got picked up a little later by another agency, but the part of the call that honestly sticks with me the most is when the cops got there. Obviously, the little boy heard this, so he came out of his bedroom. When he came out of his bedroom, he saw his mom, and he saw his mom. She'd been stabbed over 10 times. I don't remember the exact number. She ended up passing away, and he ended up screaming. And what really sticks with me most about that call are the screams of that child. He ended up going back into his bedroom and just staying back there. The officers had put him back in there, and it was kind of abnormal, but I ended up staying on the phone with him for several minutes after the cops had gotten there, just because, I just didn't want this kid to be completely alone in his bedroom, because the officers that were there, they had other things they had to do, right? They were trying to save this woman. We were still looking for the suspect. It wasn't immediately clear that he had fled in a car. So it was intense, for sure. I ended up taking a break after that call. We don't always get breaks in between calls, but the supervisor and the people that I was working with, they were great. So they let me take a break. I kind of went for a walk, cleared my head for probably 20, 30 minutes. And then I came back and I helped with a lot of the stuff we still had to do with it. That wasn't super, super pressing, so to say. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's probably the call that sticks with me the most, or out of my 5-year career.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm glad that you were actually able to go and have some time, because there's not a lot of places where you get that chance. You end up jumping right back right to the next one. As soon as you hang up, you go to the next one. You don't even get a chance to process it. And
I was really grateful for my supervisor that night, because it rocked me for a little bit, for sure. So
I can imagine. I've not had a call like that to that extent. I've had some pretty hardcore ones, but not excuse me, to that extent where I was given the chance to go and walk off. So I'm glad you had that support there. It sounds like you guys have some pretty good support there in the center to begin with.
Yeah, we definitely do. We have all of our supervisors are great. If call volume allows, it's kind of the niche. They'll let us walk after a particularly intense call. It doesn't always happen, but we allow it as much as possible. On top of that, my boss is great. She offers all types of resources after really hard calls, whether it's debriefings, mental health help, things like that. So,
and that was going to be my next question: if there was a debriefing at all for that specific call.
Yeah, there was.
Do you feel like that debriefing helped? Were you in there with law enforcement and a bunch of other folks, or was it just dispatch and you guys were talking through it?
So the one that I went to was just dispatchers. It was the people that I was working with basically that night. We were the ones that were there, and it did help for sure. I think the biggest thing I've learned when it comes to debriefings and diffusings, Diffusings are just held a lot closer after the incident versus a full debriefing.
Yeah.
But is it kind of just gives you the perspective that you're not alone. You know what I mean? So especially after a really hard call, it can feel really isolating. And going to those things, even if you don't talk, even if talking doesn't make you feel any better, it just gives you the perspective that there are other people that are affected by this incident too. Right. And what you're feeling isn't abnormal, and it's something that everyone is kind of going through together. Even though it was, a terrible thing that happened. And
I love how you put that, you all find out or realize or come to the understanding that what you're feeling is not abnormal,
Mhm.
that it's okay.
Yeah.
Did you find when talking with the rest of the folks that were in there that, kind of the reason this call sticks with you, was it similar to some of them? Like, did they have any other similarities? Or maybe you mentioned why it sticks with you, or maybe that you felt that it might stick with you at that time, and they were kind of had some similar things, or did they have different things and you guys were just learning from each other altogether?
So I think everybody is a little different in
Mhm.
specifically what sticks with them. Like
Yeah.
for me, just jumping in things that affect me is things that tend to affect me are like when older people they fall. Because my
Yeah.
grandmother, before she passed, she had fallen down a flight of stairs and it had messed her up for the rest of her life.
Mhm.
So whenever I get a call like that, it tends to affect me a little bit more than maybe my partner because he doesn't have that personal experience. But across the board in public safety, I can say it's pretty common for any call where a child is involved to affect them more. I feel like that's a pretty strong similarity. You could probably go to anybody who works in public safety across, 911. If you go overseas to the UK, I believe they're 999, whatever it may be over there.
Yeah.
Anything involving a child, a pediatric, is always more intense than when it's not.
I agree as well, because whether you have kids or not, and for me, it was different with a lot of those calls because I would come home sometimes and I would just hug my kids,
Yeah.
and like my son Logan, um, he had to have been like 4 maybe, and I had taken a call, and I remember coming home and just I was hugging him tight enough that he winced,
Mhm.
and then that's when I knew that I was hugging too tight.
Yeah.
And he goes he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Dad just had a hard day at work." But just in general, even if you don't have kids, nieces, nephews, or whatever, I think it's that innocence,
Yeah.
that there's not a lot that they can do,
Mhm.
Sometimes when you're taking these
Correct.
calls with them, you wanna reach through the phone and just, like, grab them and run with them or something, and be like, "It's gonna be okay."
Mhm. Mhm.
But but
I don't have kids
I don't
yet,
know.
but my dog has certainly felt that hug. So,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Anything, a pet,
yeah.
friend, whatever that you love, especially your pets. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people who, they've taken calls from folks who, some of them have helped do CPR on dogs, or someone has called in devastated because either their dog got hit or their cat got hit or they're just missing in general. And you feel that because that's like their kid, and we can relate to each other and be compassionate and feel what other people feel when we're doing this. I mean, we're empaths.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
It's a big I don't want to say struggle, but it
Mhm.
is definitely a challenge in the field where you're balancing, kind of not wanting to get emotionally invested in every call that you take, but
Right.
also staying empathetic enough where, we're all humans, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, you end up getting emotionally attached to one of those calls and you don't even know why.
yeah.
It might not even, hit you yet until hours later, days later, months later, whichever, and you think, "You know what? I know why that affected me now. I know why that had an impact because, for whatever reason, some sort of experience that you had in your life." So,
Yeah.
like, for me, I'm a firm believer that some of these phone calls are meant for us
Mhm.
because of whatever experience that we had in our life, and it's not that our partners wouldn't do a good job, they would probably do great. But we have a certain experience that allows us to relate deeper with that person. And sometimes that's why some of those folks stick with us. And we're like, geez.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, like I said earlier, what a profession.
Yeah, it can be a roller coaster for sure. So
yes, a roller coaster of emotions. And but you know what? I wouldn't change it. Like
I wouldn't either.
I miss it. And
I really do love it. So
I loved it as well. And it's hard to describe it to people sometimes, but again, that's why conversations like this are important. So as we go into the wrap up of this episode, we're already going on an hour. It doesn't even feel like we've been sitting here talking for that long. I could talk to you forever, dude. Like this has been really good.
This has been great. Glad. We were kind of joking beforehand that an hour is a long time to talk, but now we're there, and I'm like, wow, I could probably do it again.
I know, right? Yeah. Oh, this has been a great conversation, and I thank you for coming on, and I'm glad we were able to do this. As we go into the wrap up of this, I have one last question for you, and the question is, you're going on 5 years from the time that you started in dispatch. If you could, and of course, what I'm about to ask you, it's not to change anything, because a lot of times we go through hard lessons, whatever lessons, to bring us to where we're at today. So if you could go back in time to talk to yourself at the beginning of your dispatch career, what would you tell yourself?
To not be so hard on myself in the beginning. If I could summarize it into one sentence, that's probably what it would be, because if you're starting in this career, it's intense. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn a lot. You just need to just keep telling yourself that you're doing it for a reason, and you can do it. So just don't be so hard on myself, and I got it. So
perfect. Thank you again for being on and for what you do in our profession. It's appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It has been awesome. I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us. But the easiest way to do this is to simply go to links.co/IM911. And that is links, but with 2 I's. Links with 2 I's.co/IM911. And you'll find everything there. Email, all of my social media, where to follow. You'll find the latest episode of Within the Trenches podcast, as well as the latest episode of the Imagine Listening podcast. You'll find a link to join the Trenches community, which is a free community that has over 200 hours of free continuing education and is also the exclusive home for the Public Safety Showcase. Every other month, there will be 4 to 5 speakers that will be just talking about all topics 911. Some awesome speakers, powerful stories, and it can all be found free there. So much stuff that you'll find there. Once again, it is links with 2 I's.co/IM911. A big shout out to InDigital for being a sponsor of this podcast, as well as Rapid SOS for their partnership. And shout out to subscribers as always. And this can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, X, as well as LinkedIn Live. And there are also clips on Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, as well as TikTok and YouTube. So make sure to go out there, check out all of that stuff. And this can be heard 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. And we will see you all in the next one. Imagine listening to someone's worst day every single day. Imagine listening as someone experiences life, through their worst nightmare to the miracle of birth or a life saved. I'm Ricardo Martinez, a former 911 dispatcher, and for years, I've been recording the voices of a hidden world, ours. I've provided a space for 911 dispatchers to share their powerful stories. It started as a peer support session and continues. Dispatchers, sitting together, sharing out loud, or writing down what they couldn't say. Some stories will grip you. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, and calls that haunt us long after the line goes quiet. But imagine listening is more than heavy emotion. It's about healing. It's about laughing through the chaos, lifting each other up, and reminding the world that dispatchers are human too. The lighthearted will balance the heavy. Experience the power of storytelling, a podcast for the thin gold line and those who want to understand it. This is Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.